Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today, and a very, very warm welcome. A happy new year to you wherever you're watching from, and thank you so much for choosing Smart 24 TV. Remember, this is the #1 business channel, and of course, in 2023, we promise that we shall be your #1 station when it comes to business matters and matters concerning economic policy. This is the point, and on this show, in particular, we focus on different government and non-government organizations or institutions that are currently impacting the economics of Uganda, and also policy that is influencing business here in Uganda. And thank you so much for joining us on this second day of 2023, where we are going to, of course, discuss Uganda's private sector. Now, today, of course, the Uganda Development Corporation is a very well-known statutory body and was established way back in 1952 under the laws of Uganda, that is Article 326. But of course, the UDC company has gone through different changes and has seen different days and seasons, with its closure also in 1998 that saw many government bodies becoming public entities, as many, of course, were going private. But then the institution was revitalized in 2016 under the Uganda Development Corporation Act 2016. Now, today, we are talking about an institution that has invested in several long-term investments, especially when you look at the Soroti factory. We do have a ferry on the Kalangala route, and of course UDC and several other sectors that the corporation has been able to invest in. Now, today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Dennis Dokoria, who is the Public Relations Officer of the Uganda Development Corporation. You're most welcome, Mr. Dennis.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. First of all, I would like to wish everybody Happy New Year, because it's a beautiful thing to come into a new year. And I'm honored that during this new year, I am here to share knowledge about an institution I am very passionate about, an institution that is doing a lot for this country and supporting a lot of people in one way or the other, especially the private sector. So I'm happy, and that is Uganda Development Corporation. So as I've been introduced, I'm called Dennis Dokoria. I head the Public Relations Department at Uganda Development Corporation.
Wow. Tell us about, how was your Christmas? I know we are still in the Christmas and festive mood.
Yes.
How was it winding up there? How was it like for you personally?
Well, it was quite interesting. It was lovely. It was a good thing, because when you go through a full year, definitely in the year we have quite a number of challenges. We have wins here and there. So it's a time to reflect on what the year was, and also go back to celebrate the birth of Christ, which is a very good thing for all of us. And what I would say, it was a very good time. We had a good time during Christmas with family. It's a time of family, and now we are back to work.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about UDC. First of all, when you look at UDC, sometimes you confuse you think about these institutions like the Uganda Export Promotion Board, you think about the Uganda Development Bank, and several other government or statutory bodies that have been put in place, especially to support the private sector. Tell us how different the role of the Uganda Development Corporation is from amongst all these other government institutions.
Yeah, so UDC, commonly known as the Uganda Development Corporation, one is a statutory body formed by an Act of Parliament, just as you said, 2016 Act of Parliament. Earlier on, you alluded to the fact that we were formed in 1952, which is a fact that UDC started in 1952 as a statutory body and as investment arm of the government. So we are the investment arm of the government, and we work towards socioeconomic development, especially in building industry in different parts of the country. Were formed ideally even in 1952. You see, 1952 and the UDC of 1952 and the UDC of 2016 have the same objectives. So basically, we say we are an old and new organization. Old, the fact that we were formed in 1952, we worked, we did a lot for this country, a lot of investments. If you know the likes of the former Uganda hotels, the Tampecos, there are so many different enterprises and industries, banks, that were owned by UDC. And definitely during the challenges of the 80s and the 70s, the unrest we had in this country, that caused a bit of problems to the enterprises that we had. And those enterprises got affected and started struggling. But then later on in the 80s and so, there were structural changes. The government changed policy and privatization came in and UDC was wound up. But the government realized that UDC is still a very important arm and it can actually support industry. Now, when we come on board, you are saying what's the difference between UDC and the other bodies like UDB and the rest. Now, UDC first is an investment arm, so we invest in different enterprises. We invest in form of financing or maybe equity financing, and we may also investment financing, where we invest in the body and we usually have shares within the body, so we have an interest in the organization that we're investing in. And yet, most of these organizations, like for example, the bank, UDB, give loans to these organizations at the interest, but they may not necessarily have a stake within the organization. So for us, that is what we do. And most of the investments that we have, probably we shall talk about them later, are also, we have a share, we have a stake within them. So we own shares within most of those investments. So that's basically the difference. And also another difference is the portfolio. Our investment portfolio is much bigger. We are mostly focusing on medium and large scale investments. And yet organizations like probably UDB can also focus on the SME sector. So our focus is the medium and large investments.
I cannot come to you with my SME with any idea below, for example, 200 million.
No, definitely not. Okay. Because what we're looking at is we're looking at large-scale investment that have impact within the country. Yeah.
Well, now look at the journey of UDC. You've talked about having the same objective with the UDC of 2016 and the UDC of 1952.
Yeah.
How has the journey been? We understand during, of course, Obote's regime, there were changes there. When it came to government going private, government bodies going private, the institution completely closed.
Yes.
And actually, the discussion was just brought on board by one of the members of parliament then in 2017. What really what could you say has inspired this journey of being on and off? What has made the institution insist, even despite the fact that over 70 years have passed, but we still insist that we need UDC?
Yes, it's very important because UDC invests and supports industrial development. And you find that there are a lot of organizations that are struggling because our investments are in what we call greenfields and brownfields. When we talk about a brownfield, that means we're investing in an already established enterprise. Now, greenfields is we're investing in a new enterprise, just starting. So you realize that many of these brownfields are struggling. They are struggling, some of them are running down, and yet they had an impact within the community. Maybe they could have been creating jobs. Maybe they could have creating some economic development within the community. Probably they could be supporting the import-export, the balance of trade. So we realize that ignoring some of these enterprises and letting them die would also be counterproductive when it comes to the economy. So the government came up with an idea and said, but previously UDC had so many investments and these were doing very well. But why don't we get back on the drawing board and revive this institution that can continue to support industrialization? Because we're now an industrial, we're in the industrial stage. We need to industrialize our country. Our country needs to change. And what we look at is, how can we industrialize? How can we invest in strategic areas that sometimes are not one, they're not attractive to the private sector, yet they have a lot of impact when it comes to job creation, it comes to many different things. So what we do is that we invest in some of those areas that may not be attractive, or may not, maybe some enterprise may not have enough capital to invest in them, and yet we see that there is value in them. Yeah.
So what do you think was the impact? For example, when government bodies went public, was there a smooth transition? Because like you said, UDC was established by government, for the government, but also to help the public actually get into the industrial sector, to see that we industrialize our country. When government bodies started going public, was there something that really did affect the UDC, how it operated back then?
Yeah, back then, when the government bodies, when government went private, what happened? Most of the entities that were being run by UDC definitely were privatized. So having privatized all the entities, that made UDC obsolete.
Yes.
And UDC had to close. But now you realize that there are certain areas in the government, that in business, in the private sector, that may be very attractive, may not be that attractive, especially for investment, and yet they have a lot of impact that they may create to the nation. And so when we do our studies and we find some of these places, and we look at the proposals that are sent to us, then we're able to do due diligence and find out if we invested in this, what would be the impact? So one thing I would say is that, yes, privatization was a good thing because businesses thrived. But with privatization, people want to see profits immediately. And yet, they may not invest in certain areas because they are not that attractive. Yet, on the other side, those areas could probably impact the economy of this country. So UDC came in to fill the gap. Yeah,
and before we go into the break, our first break here, we want to tip into, for example, the plans that UDC had back then. In 1952, we had goals like us having coffee and tea and exporting all these raw materials. How did that change in 2016? Because of course, much as the objective is the same, but we couldn't bring the same strategy, for example, from the 1952 to the current demands of the market. How did the plan actually change when it came to 2016?
The plan, when we started UDC, we eventually came up with what we call a strategic plan, a 10-year strategic plan, which is from 2019 to 2030. And that's the year 2029 to 2030. So this strategic plan is hinged on strategic areas that can drive industrialization in this country. One of them being agro-manufacturing, because we know that our country is an agro-based nation. And a lot of people in the community are actually involved in agro-manufacturing, rather agro-processing or production. So they produce a lot of products. And a lot of times you find that the market for some of the products that they produce is not available. So many of these products end up rotting in the farms, or the farmers even get low prices for these products. Now, other than agro, we also realize that our country is also very blessed with minerals, different minerals. So our investment also is in mineral beneficiation. So how do we add value to the rich minerals that this country has to offer? So that's another area we are looking at. Then we're also looking at the services and infrastructure, because services are also very important for our communities, for us to strive. So it's also an area that we have invested in the hotel sector, the hospitality sector, and others, transport and other areas. So why? Because these are facilitators, they're enablers. These are enablers for industrialization and also for what we do. So yes, so our strategic plan is based on that. Our objectives, one, is that we came under objective, and the first objective we had is to strengthen internal capacity and processes within the organization. Because when you start an organization, it's important that we have the right skill sets. We have the right people placed in the right places. Because if we are able to strengthen ourselves internally, then that will be able to strengthen us externally. Because if you don't work internally to improve on yourself, then it will be shown externally. But if we strengthen ourselves internally and we strengthen our capacity, we have recruited the right skill sets, the people with the right skills, and place them in the right places. We train and build capacity of our team, our members, so that they are able to deliver to the objectives of the organization. The second thing we are focusing on is that we are going to leverage partnerships. We're leveraging partnerships and networks. And why we are doing this is we want to optimize the resources, because there are a lot of resources this country has. This country is rich, from north to south to east to west, everywhere is rich with resources. But these resources have not been exploited. These resources have been, are there. Recently, the oil story. You can see what is now going on. That's the resource that has been sitting there. We have iron ore, we have a lot of minerals, we have salt, we have glass, and all these things are all in place. And then lastly, our third objective within our strategic plan is to invest in what we call strategic and sustainable areas. In other words, we do strategic investments. And all these are geared towards the overall economic development of this country. Because other than economic development, also looking at industrial development, this country must develop industrially. And why do we do this? Why we are doing this is, one, we need to create more employment, because jobs need to be created for our people. We also need to utilize the raw materials that are available. That is very, very critical. We need to also think about improving the trade balance, import and export. How much are we importing? How much are we exporting? So all these are within our strategic plan. Why do we do this? We need to also develop local entrepreneurship, local industry. That is very important. And finally, we also have to balance regional development, because we need to know that industry is all over the country. And if we leave it to the private sector, they may not be able to invest in that way. But for us, we're saying, can we have all over the country, in different parts of the country, can we have investments?
Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis. We're going to take a very short break. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still talking about the impact of the Uganda Development Corporation on Uganda's economy. And I'm with Mr. Dennis Dokoria, who is the Public Relations Officer of the corporation. We are taking a very short break. We return shortly with more on what has been achieved so far by the Uganda Development Corporation, and looking ahead, of course, into the new challenges, and of course, how ready they are to actually get to tackle them. My name is Anthony. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Smart 24, driving business. Say goodbye to paperwork and travel costs. Now every MTN customer can register to invest in securities anytime and anywhere with Zabu in a few simple steps. Step 1. Dial *292 hash. Step 2. Select option 1. Register with Zabu. Step 3. Enter your full names. Step 4. Enter your national identification number. Step 5. Enter your national identification card number. In 24 hours, you will receive an SMS confirming your registration. Congratulations, you are now ready to invest.
But 3K for sending charges? Surely not now.
Many to get there.
Don't be, wait a little bit, please.
I'm gonna go waiting in charge.
Chikole for less, I gonna hustle, no stress. Whether night or day to the okay.
Don't hustle to pay the bills. Send or receive money. Chikole for less, ne flexi pay. Hold it.
Chikole for less with FlexiPay. Dial *291 hash to transact or download the FlexiPay app to get started. Stanbic Bank. It can be. Stanbic Bank is regulated by the Bank of Uganda, and customer deposits are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund of Uganda, up to 10 million shillings.
Smart 24, driving business.
Thank you so much for watching Smart 24 TV, where we drive your business. My name is Anthony Sebali, and I am your host. Today we are talking about the Uganda Development Corporation and the impact that the corporation has had on Uganda's economy. I'm with Mr. Dennis Dokoria, who is the Public Relations Officer of the corporation. Now, of course, you can hit us up. On Twitter. That is, if you're using social media, or on our YouTube live stream. We are streaming live at Smart24 TV Live. For any comments you might have on the show, any questions, you can actually post them there. You can also follow me at Anthony Sebale for more on what's happening on this topic. Now, Mr. Dokoria, the corporation has been in place, like you've mentioned, since 2016. I know it might not be a very long time, but I understand a lot has been done. If we wanted to get down to what has been done so far, as of course in line with your strategy 2019-2029, what has been achieved in the different sectors that you have invested in as a corporation?
Okay, thank you very much. UDC, though young, just a couple of years old, I would say we have been able to achieve quite a lot, and we are moving higher and higher in our portfolio of enterprises that we are supporting. We have 3 areas so far, according to our strategic plan, that we're focusing in, that I alluded to earlier. The first one is agro-manufacturing. And in the agro-manufacturing area, we have supported close to, right now, that are in operation, because we have quite a number in the pipeline. But let me talk about those that are current in operation. I would say there are 10 investments. Yeah. And these investments are in different areas, which are strategic to this country. For example, one of the areas we have invested in is in fruit production, value addition to fruits. And in that regard, we invested in a project in Soroti, what we call the Soroti Fruit Limited. It's a factory that is producing juices and concentrates, both for mango and also orange. Now, why did we invest in that area? Because that area is one of the biggest fruit growing areas, and they have a lot of oranges and also mangoes. And most of these mangoes and oranges were going to waste. They were actually sitting in the farms. There was no market for these products, and would have traders, business people coming from different areas and coming and buying them at very cheap prices. And eventually these people were getting a raw deal. You would also find mangoes on the trees, and you find the trees are looking very beautiful with mangoes. But when you look down, it's very ugly with the rotting mangoes. So we felt that we have all this value in terms of fruits in Soroti and in the Teso sub-region. And yet these are not being utilized. So we came up with that idea and invested. And currently we have Soroti Fruit Factory operational, and they are actually producing both fruits, juices, and concentrates, ready-to-drink juices and concentrates under the Teju brand. So we started with the sachet pack, but now we have gone into the PET bottles, and those ones are building a lot of traction in the market, and they are being sold really well. So beyond the fruits, we've also invested in another strategic area, and that is in the teas, because you know that tea is one of the most important export products in this country. And we've invested in quite a number of factories. Actually, I think one of our biggest investments in the teas. We have what we call the Mavale tea factory in Chenjojo. We also have the Mpanga tea factory in Port Poto. Then we have the Kigezi Highland tea. This one has actually two factories, one in Chisoro and another one in Kavale. Then we also have the Kayonza Growers Tea Factory. So all these are very strategic, because tea is strategic in this country, especially for the trade balance, because almost 90% or more than 90% of the tea that is produced in this country is exported to the different countries, and especially in the Arab world. And what does that mean? That means it actually brings foreign exchange into this country, and that helps with the trade balance. So we are not just importing, and spending money to import, but now we are exporting, and the country is actually benefiting. So the teas factories are doing well. Then we also have what we call...
Maybe also, Mr. Dennis, you can talk about the stake.
Yes.
I was reading a story where they were saying actually UDC has 80% stake in the fruits company.
Yes.
Why is that? Someone could have a view, maybe probably, why not take 100%? Where is the other 20%, for example?
So, yes, as UDC, we are not competitors with the private sector, but we are enablers with the private sector. And that's why most times we cannot start a factory and say it is UDC 100%. No, we start and we invest with the private sector. So for the Soroti, we're investing with the farmers group, which owns the 20%. And they contribute towards the raw materials, mobilization, and all these things. So yes, we share. We don't invest as us alone, but we are enablers of the private sector. So we're supporting the private sector. And that's why we did not take 100% of that, but we had to work with the community. Yeah.
Is there a way of, like, for example, after a specific period of time, after achieving the objective of, for example, the fruits company, and now it has grown to a stage whereby, for example, these farmers, can actually take over 100% stake? Is there provisions where actually the corporation can pull out of a certain probably company where they have invested for a specific period of time?
Yeah, definitely. If we invest in an enterprise and we have shareholding in the enterprise, and the enterprise is able to pay back the loan or pay back the equity to UDC, then the enterprise takes off as an independent enterprise. So we are not there to hold on to enterprises. We are there to enable the private sector, such that for us, we'll be very happy to see enterprises growing and growing independently. Yeah. So because our work is to support as many as possible, not to compete with the private sector. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, we can push on with you're talking about the Kayonza Growers Tea Factory.
Yes, so the teas, yes, those are the teas. There are quite a number that we are supporting.
How much stake in this? We have, you've mentioned Mabale Tea.
Yeah, most of them were less than 50%.
Less than 50%.
Yes, most of them were less than 50%. Wow. Some of them were in 30s, 20s, 40s. So we're less than 50%. Wow. Yeah, because most of these are owned by the farmers. You know, when this used to be part of the old UDC. Yeah, but when UDC folded, most of these were given to the farmers, so they are owned by the farmers. Most of these tea factories are owned by the farmers, but many of them had challenges, and some of them were about to wind up, actually. And we realized that some of these were going to, people are going to lose jobs. People are going to, the economic development within the area was going to be affected. I can imagine if you lose about 400 jobs from a factory, what is the ripple effect backwards to the families, to the people who had opened businesses around there? You know, it would be a huge effect. So yeah, so some of these we came in to support some of them. We gave them loans and we got equity in that regard. Then we have also what we call Bukona Agro Processors Limited. This one is in Nwaya, in northern Uganda. Now these ones are doing quite an interesting business. They're actually producing ethanol from cassava and other cereals. And why did we invest in this? Because we're also supporting the community. Because the community is producing cassava, they don't have the market for cassava, and we are coming in to say, can we partner with an enterprise that is already doing some of this, so that we're able to produce this? And now we are producing an alternative energy, clean energy. Actually, recently they got even an award. We are producing an alternative energy that is going to help the community reduce on what we call the environmental degradation. So yes, then we also have Mutuma commercial agencies.
Where is this ethanol used, for example? Because when we talk about ethanol fermentation, we know it especially from sugar factories. It's a kind of a byproduct that they get from mainly processing sugar.
Yes.
And then they use it for, where do you market this, for example, ethanol?
Now, for example, for Bukona, currently, we are marketing. One is that we're having cook stoves. Actually, right now, they are assembling cook stoves in the factory, and those cook stoves utilize this ethanol. And you're able to have clean energy in your house. It's much cheaper, it's cleaner, and it will definitely revolutionize, because you can see that the environment, we are destroying the environment by cutting trees for all this
fuel,
cooking fuel. Yeah. But now we're able to have ethanol, and we even have the stoves that are being assembled, so that we have the ethanol and the stoves. Now, Bukona also has export market. Vivo Energy, actually, in Nairobi from Kenya, is consuming most and a lot of this ethanol. And what does that mean? That means actually there is a lot of income coming to the country, because we're exporting. So you can imagine what is going on in this country from some of these investments. So that's what's happening in Lukona. Then we also have what we call Mutuma commercial agencies. Now, Mutuma commercial agencies are producing absorbent cotton wool that has a very good absorption level. And most of this cotton wool can be used and is able to be used in the different health facilities because its absorbent capability is very good. Sometimes you may look at certain cotton wools that we find in the market and you find that the absorbent level is not very good. But the one that is being made at Mutuma is quite good.
Yeah, I've actually read something about it. It's unique, even when you look at statistics from the global standards of cotton.
Yeah.
It's one of the best you can find
Yes.
in the world.
It is.
How did the formulation come about? Is it a certain sort of maybe plants, or is it something we only have here in Uganda?
No, it's just the cotton. It's just the cotton, and it also comes down to the production, the way it is produced, and quality control. Because we're looking at quality products. Because as an enterprise or as a UDC, we have to make sure that the enterprises we're working with are able to produce something of good quality that can go to the market and can be exported. Because we don't just look at the local market, but we're looking at the export market as well. So this cotton wool is very good. It's a very immensely good quality. It's called pearl cotton. And so it's doing very well. So those are just from the agro, and those are the ones that are operational. We have very many others that are in the pipeline. Then the next area is what we call infrastructure and services. Now, one of the big investments we have under infrastructure is what we call the Kalangala Infrastructure Services. Now, we partnered with this organization to, one, provide ferry services on the lake to connect Kalangala to the mainland. So we've put 2 ferries there. We also went ahead to do some roadworks, infrastructure. We did about 66 kilometers of road, and that's the best road you find in Kalangala right now. Because if you have good transport infrastructure, then you're able to move goods faster from one place to another. We also generate electricity, solar electricity. These are services, these are infrastructure that probably had not been provided for these people previously, but were able to provide for them. Now they have electricity. We have lit up the place. And also we did water. We connected water, piped water, because water is life and people need piped water. So we connected water, and water is now flowing in Kalangala. So that's a huge project, a huge investment that we did, and it is actually producing very immensely good results.
This infrastructure, is it in terms of you mentioned the roads and the ferries.
Yes.
Is it for entirely commercial purposes, or actually people can actually use these means?
These are commercial purposes. This is a business.
Okay.
KIS, Kalangala Infrastructure Services, is a business enterprise. It's a private sector. Like all the Mpangas, all these are businesses. So they are running entirely as commercial enterprises. Even Soroti, where we have 80% stake, is running entirely as a business, as a commercial enterprise. So they are making money. Now, maybe you may realize that there's a lot of trade going on between Kalangala and the mainland.
True.
Now, you look at the palm oil. There's a lot of palm oil being produced in Kalangala. But how does that palm oil now cross to come to maybe Ginger, to Bidco?
To Bidco, yes.
Yeah. So we looked at such things and say, how can we facilitate trade? How can we facilitate that to happen? So that's why we invested in some of these things. So the ferries are able to transport these from Kalangala to the mainland, and also to do other business within. Yeah, other trading and supplies.
Wow. Okay.
Then we also have other infrastructure services, like we have the Munyonyo Commonwealth Resort. the stake of government is now being managed by UDC in the Commonwealth Resort. Then we also have Nile Hotel International Limited, where we also own government stake in that. Nile Hotel International Limited is where the concession is, Serena concession is. So Serena is running a concession for Nile Hotel, and but the Nile Hotel Limited is being managed by UDC. So that is in the services. Then we go to mineral beneficiation. That's the third area of our investments. And in the mineral beneficiation, most of the projects are still in the pipeline. We are working on them. For example, we are looking at Moroto. We are looking at Moroto cement plant. We are looking to put up a cement plant in Moroto. And why? Because that's where the raw material is. You find that all these cement factories in Tororo and other places, most of them are getting actually the raw material, critical raw material from Moroto. So we're looking at making it easier to have a factory. And as I told you earlier, we're looking at regional balance in terms of in the investment. So we're looking at having a factory in Moroto. Now, you imagine what would happen when we have a factory in Moroto. Do you know the development that will happen in the Karamoja region? We're also looking at sheet glass manufacturing in Masaka. We have the raw material for making glass, and we feel that would be also a strategic investment in that area. We're also looking to Katwe, a salt plant, because you notice that in Katwe also, in the salt plant, there is a lot of salt within Katwe. And there was a time that the government tried to put together a factory there, but it didn't work.
Yeah, I've actually visited that plant. And,
yes.
It's devastating what really happened.
Exactly.
Everything just went to waste.
Yes, but now we want to revive that.
Wow.
We want to invest in it and see to it that that factory runs and we're able to add value to the salt that is available there. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis.
Yes, please.
And we are going to take another break. But when we return, very glad that now you mentioned the different industries and sectors. We want to talk about some of the challenges. One of the things that has stood out in this, like, for example, mentioning that salt company is sustainability. What is the plan that the UDC is using to see that some of these factories, some of these investments that are being put in place are sustainable? Then, of course, looking at the challenges like climate change, how are we regulating this? And then the impact. We want to talk about some of the things that have actually been able to be realized in the Ugandan economy due to the investments that UDC has made. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the Uganda Development Corporation, and we're sharing, of course, with Mr. Dennis, who is the PRO of the corporation, and we are talking about its impact on Uganda's economy. My name is Anthony. We are going to take another very short break. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.